Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week, my guest is Don Wong. Don, let's give everyone a bit of an intro to yourself.
Hi, I'm Don Wong, and I am an avid listener of Glenn's podcast, A Canadian Investing in the U.S. And Glenn's podcast has given a lot of information, and I've started my U.S. investing journey just recently, and basically pretty much Glenn's information really just kind of got me started.
That's awesome. So, do you have any properties in Canada, or how did the whole process go? What's your story?
No, I don't have any properties in Canada. So I've got one like a pre-construction, but that's been going for a very long time. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we're talking. We were talking ahead of time anyway. We had a conversation, and what really intrigued me is you're doing some credit card stacking. Let's maybe start back up a little bit. Tell people what it is, and then and what we can do with that, and then how to do it.
Well, really, I would say credit card, so-called card stacking, is really just applying for credit cards at different points in time. And a lot of people think, okay, when you apply for a credit card, your credit score will go down.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times what people think is, oh, I don't want so many credit cards because it may impact, my future borrowing capabilities and things like that. But in fact, I've been doing this for a couple of years just to trying to sometimes getting the promotions from credit cards. And I find that over the years that, it doesn't really impact the credit score, and it doesn't really impact your ability to borrow in the future. So I can kind of tell you is that you can actually kind of restructure your credit from your credit card, and perhaps to move that credit, sometimes you can move it towards your personal line of credit and increasing the limit from there. So all in all, if for someone that's doing, investing either in Canada or in the States, you can actually help you to do some sort of like short-term movement of funds and liquidity from time to time. So I think it's a pretty good strategy for someone just to get started.
Okay, and you said it's like points in time. I caught off of when you're talking. Is it like, should we be? You don't go on a rampage and apply for like 30 in one day. You spread them out, or like, is there a strategy for that?
Well, there are a lot of people out there. There's actually a community of people that will apply, for example, 6 credit cards in like a span of 2 months. But I don't recommend that, right? Mm-hmm. That's really kind of, because I work for one of the banks too, and I wouldn't recommend that. And that's really from a bank's perspective, it is kind of we call these people who are gamers, right?
Yeah.
That type of activity is strongly, it's not strongly encouraged. But I would say, 1 or 2 credit cards over a 3 months time span, it's plausible. Okay. Or maybe 3 to 6 months would be plausible, right? So you just kind of put your spending on these cards to get your welcome bonus, and then you kind of park these cards aside, and as you see a bonus comes on, and maybe that intrigues you, then you can reapply again.
So you just said a couple things that were just my next questions. So is it to sign up for the bonus points, or is like because does the promotional, you don't know the promotional rate if they're going to give you like 0% or 3% or something for a year. You usually don't know that when you're signing up, right? That's usually not the pitch, right?
A lot of times the welcome bonus is about the points, the lump sum points. So I collect, for example, Aeroplan points, right? Okay. So for example, now I think, CIBC has their own, for example, credit cards that give out, let's say 20,000 points on the fly when you meet like $1,000 spend, right? So a lot of people would try to apply for this card and then try to meet that spend, and then once you meet that spend within the certain time frame, then a lot of these people just park aside these cards and then apply for a different one as time goes on. So you kind of collect all these points, and that's how they do it.
So then, do you cancel these cards at some point, or you just keep them?
So typically, I wouldn't like to cancel these cards, because I like to keep them so that I build my I guess my ability to I guess it helps your credit history, right? So if you have a large credit limit that's unutilized, that's actually beneficial to your credit history.
Yeah, it shows you, like, what do they call it? Restraint. Yeah. For not using all the credit you have.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like you kind of demonstrate that you have the ability to, to not only repay your bills, but also kind of like show your self-restraint from using it.
So you get these cards, you put some money on them to get, like, whatever they require to get your sign up bonus. Do you have to keep putting money on these, like, a little bit every year, or is it you can just throw those in a drawer now? And
I actually put maybe like maybe buy a latte or something every month or so, just to keep it active. That it really helps also kind of build your history so that there is activity on these cards. But that's really like what I do. But there's a lot of people in the community who they call churners, right? They just park these cards aside. They just put in a drawer, and until when they cancel, they just kind of redo the whole process again. Yeah.
Interesting. And like, I just recently, like this week, I got 3 of them in the mail for like promotional rates. 2 of them were 0% for 12 months, and then one was 0% for 18 months. And they all have the Canadian ones. They tend to have the what do you call it, like a 3% initial payment thing for them. I'm guessing you got more than that. You got more than the 2 or 3.
I mean, I don't carry any balances on my credit cards, and I don't typically run like a line of credit on it, right? So I just run my expenses on it. I think in the States it's much more lucrative in a sense that which is why main reason I'm here is trying to tell your listeners that they're, especially on American Express side, they allow you to borrow the first year at 0%, right? So that really doesn't really happen here in Canada. In Canada, there is so-called something 0%, but then you have to apply like a 3% balance transfer fee, which kind of like a fee. And I think no one really wants to do that unless you're really kind of short in cash.
Yeah, no. But no, that's a very interesting point. Now with the US ones, let's say they give you, well, it has to be hopefully enough money, right? If they give you like a little, I don't know, $3,000 or $5,000 thing, it's not going to get you that far. But ideally, you need to have a sign up and get a larger amount to start with. But you could borrow the money, and when you're thinking about doing like what I'm doing, like taking private money or setting up a fix and flip loan, you could skip all of the setup fees and everything else, and just run this off a credit card. And especially if you're doing projects that are, I don't know, 3-6 months, you could be in and out and basically have free money. You didn't have to go through the trouble of dealing with anybody.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you want to make sure your utilization on those credit cards, even though it's 0%, you want to keep it at around like 30% utilization, right? Because that actually can ding your credit score. And you want to keep that at that level. Otherwise, you'll have trouble applying for additional credit cards down the road.
Interesting. So that's an interesting point. So now you have to really get a larger amount if you're going to keep it only using a small part of it, right? And it might involve using several different cards in order, if you're going to pull off a renovation or something like that. Yeah.
When I started investing in the US, I did it by myself and had to go through the growing pains of doing that. GlennSutherland.com/coaching. A 12-week coaching program done 1 hour per week over Zoom from the comfort of your own home. Classes are kept to 5 people to be able to answer everyone's questions. Shortcut the process. Make fewer mistakes. Curriculum available at GlennSutherland.com/coaching.
I did this a few years ago. And so, because sometimes like with projects, I borrow private money, or I borrow, money comes in, money comes out, and you need stuff every once in a while. And also, honestly, it was part of it. I wanted to see if this could be done. And I got the balance transfer checks, right? So it was 0% for I think 18 months. And I'm like, I'm gonna see if I can, because I'm like, this will be a good podcasting video. I'll see if I can buy a house because I with the credit cards and see if I can do that. And yeah, I could pay with the check from the credit cards. And so, but I still it did involve some extra some moving parts, because I needed to convert that to US, right? So if you're working in Canada, it'd be a little bit easier, right? So I had to cash that check, wait for it to clear, then send it to the exchange company, then send it to the US. And so it took a little bit of time to pull this off. But yeah, I did do it on a credit card. And the other problem I had when I was trying to do this was that they were saying, oh, you need, we're only going to give you like $10,000 for your first credit card. And so I was like, oh, but can you just move the rate up? Or I'm like, I have these other ones at these other major banks. Can I just cancel those and you give me the credit on this one? And they're like, it doesn't work like that. No. And I went, can I have another credit card then? They're like, okay, believe me, I couldn't believe this worked. So I was like, can I get another credit card then? Oh, we can do another application. So they're like, okay, I can give you 10,000 on this one. And it's same bank, same card. Like they look identical, just different numbers. Here's like 7 on this one. Here's another 10 on this one. Here's another 10. Just kept applying for the exact same card from the exact same bank. And then I called them up and I said, hey, I have all these credit cards from you guys. It's kind of a nuisance. Can you just put them together? And they're like, yeah, no problem. And they put it together. And I'm like, okay, now I have enough for a house. Exactly. Yeah. So I went and I bought a property in Indianapolis a couple of years ago, and just to see how it would go. And yeah, it worked. And then I did the refinance at about the 12-month mark, because for refinances, you go like, if you do it on day one, there are lenders that'll do it. It's going to be very expensive. You wait to 3 months, better. 6 months is more traditional. 12 months, which I found out to do a refi with the Canadian banks in the US, you got to wait 12 months. They wouldn't let me refi because I'm trying to refi property at the 6-month mark. Can't do that with Royal Bank or TD, found out. So learning something all the time because I don't usually work with them. So back to using my regular banks because I don't have that time to wait. I don't like waiting. I want to use the money again. But yeah, refinanced the property, paid off the credit card before. One thing we'll have to watch that I found was the moving money back and forth to the US, the exchange rate can change in 6 months. In my case, when I did it, it worked out better and I got extra money in Canada, but it can go the other way too. And you can be short on these things. And with these credit cards, you never want to miss the payments.
No. Yeah.
Sorry, I took your thought everyone for a rant there. But yeah, no, tell me if I'm wrong, but I heard this. If you get, so say they give you like a 12-month promotional rate, right? Or 0% or 3% balance transfer fee and then 0% for 12 months or 18 months, whatever they offered you. If you miss the very last payment, and so it hits month 13 or month 19, you get charged all the interest for the whole section. I could be wrong.
I don't know, actually.
You pay yours off, right? So you weren't using it to buy a house or anything like that, right? But I've always made sure I paid mine off, but I heard that from someone. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I was told by the bank that if I miss a minimum payment, the entire balance will be charged at the regular rate, like 23% or something like that.
Oh yeah. Some of those cards can be 30 or 40 too.
Yeah, so like you can't get your 0% back anymore. That's what I was told. But I've never I didn't know about going back in time. And
and one thing, if you do are like you have this promotional rate and you're like, I don't really want to pay these things right off, if you're trying to run your numbers, you have to pay. It's not an amortized loan, or maybe it is an amortized loan, but you have to pay more than just the interest rate. They want a balance every month, which is decently high in comparison to the amount of money you borrowed, I found.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's like, because you want this thing to be paid off in, I don't know, 10 years or something like that. So I guess it's basically the same as an amortized loan. So you're paying off, some of the, I guess, principal as you go, as well as the interest rate at a high, like I think they're still charging you like the 18% interest rate or 20% or 30, whatever it is, but it's all principal pay down, but they're still charging you that amount, I believe is what how I'm not sure how they calculated it, but I was surprised. I'm like, oh, I'm got a 0% loan, but they're like, yeah, they want $350 a month or whatever it was, right? And I'm like, huh. I'm like, I kind of thought that I wasn't gonna have to do anything.
Yeah.
So if you're running numbers, it is principal pay down, but you still have to come up with carrying costs, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that a lot of Canadians who wants to kind of get into their US card game, right? It's very challenging, and because a lot of people don't know how to get around that, right? And there's a community out there that kind of talks about this very openly, actually, to kind of show you step by step on how do you do this.
Yeah. Oh, and it is more difficult to get the US credit cards, right? So like the first one I went and got in the States, I just went to one of the Canadian banks, right? I'm like, I just need a credit card, right? So I got one of my personal name and just got it there. And then as soon as I had the card, I called them up and I got them to convert the card from reporting to my social insurance number to reporting to my Itin number, because I wanted to build up American credit as well. So this can double work for you, right? And if you want to build up American credit, you need at least 2 points of credit, right? And so you have to actually borrow money. And so for me, yeah. So, but you borrow it, paid off every month, right? But you, so yeah, you borrow this money and you try and get this going. I call up the bank, change it to my Itin, and after a while, I was like, hey, okay, lenders, can I get a better loan based on my Itin, right? I have an Itin credit score, and they're like, that's not worth anything. And I'm like, what? And it wasn't for years. And just as of these probably people listen to this podcast, whatever, but as of 2021 in the fall, they actually came out with Itin. So there's foreign national lending and there's foreign national with credit lending. And so you can actually get a better interest rate by building your Itin, which before it really didn't do anything. And at least the lending I was using, it wasn't building anything. If I went to a Canadian bank, they're allowed to use my social insurance number and based on what I owned, what I made, all that stuff, right? And the other banks, they're like, this is asset-based lending. We don't care about that either. So I was like, well, what was I building this up for? What's the point? And so anyway, but now there is a program for it.
Like what are the rates on that?
Yeah, it's about the same. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk after, because if I say a rate, then someone's gonna listen to this like a year later and they'll be like, "That's a rate? That could be high. That could be low." I don't know what's gonna happen in the future, right? So we'll talk after. But yeah, and I also found it was hard to get credit cards. I originally searched Itin credit cards on Google, and I found that there was like whole kinds of people have created these web pages, and Chase had a card called Itin credit card.
Oh, really?
And I applied for it and I couldn't get it. Mind you, I've learned some tricks since then. So maybe I'll go into my tricks. So I'm taking over this interview, Don. I'm sorry. But so what I found out was what it might have been the reason I wasn't getting this, because it was a US credit card, and what they like is a US address. Makes sense, right? They don't want to send statements to Canada, and they're probably confused why a Canadian even wants this. So first of all, get a US address to put these cards on. What was my other trick? Now my brain went to mush. But get a US address and apply for credit cards. And I couldn't get the Chase Itin credit card, but I found that there was a bunch of other cards I could get. So anyone listening, if you want to know, just send me an email. I'll give you the link. I get $75 every time you sign up. Full disclosure, I think you guys get $200 for signing up. A new person, I get 75. Not a terrible trade-off, but anyway, kind of a sneaky thing. I feel like I just But anyway, there are cards out there, and it was tricky. Like I went and applied for Wells Fargo and Bank of America, and I couldn't get the cards. I wasn't getting them.
So like there's a strategy, right? So a lot of people start off with American Express because that's the easiest route. So what people do is they first of all call American Express. There's a specific department called like a global transfer team, and they take care of anything that they will pull your credit from Canada. allowing you to apply using that credit application, applying for a US credit card. That's kind of like your first step, because you don't need a US address, and a lot of people have done
perfect.
that. And a lot of people have gone through like all the US American Express cards, and got their bonuses and things like that. And for me, I don't think that's the right way, because that's kind of like milking the bank, right? So you don't want to do that. And all of these bonuses are typically just allowing you to get like once in a lifetime. And so you also want to wait the opportunity to apply when there's like a bonus, like a special bonus, right? So once you have that, a lot of times they would recommend you now to get a US address, then you can get your Itin set up. Then you need about like a year of Itin history. Then you can start considering applying for cards like Chase cards, right? And that's what I did. So basically I got like a couple American Express cards from the States. Then I got my Itin. I just went online. Actually, you can do it yourself too. Just fill out like a W-7 form. And then I took a risky route. I just mailed in my passport. So because it was during COVID, I couldn't get a certified copy of my passport, right? So they accept either one of those. Then I mailed it in, and hopefully they return it back to me, because there's no need for me to travel at that time. So luckily I got it back, right? Then I got my Itin. And then at least I like what you did. I kind of moved some of my credit cards from personal into my Itin number, right? So now you kind of start building your history. Then a year after that, then I start applying for my first Chase card, right? And then from there, they actually look at the history and then ask you to verify your US address and things like that. So that's kind of like my foot in the door. But it takes time, especially for Chase, because there's a lot of rules around getting Chase cards, because they look at how many cards you have how many credit cards you applied for and got over the past 24 months, how many inquiries you've had over the last 30 days and things like that. So the general rule, I mean, a lot of people know out there, is Chase, they only allow you to hold 5 credit cards over a 24-month time span, right? So if you have more than that, then you have to wait until the seasoning of that card, of your first card, since you got your first one from anywhere, right? Not just from Chase.
That's interesting. If you wanted a Chase one, though, then you start to have to think in your head, maybe this is one I have to do in the first 5, right?
Exactly.
And don't add it in later, right? Because you're not going to work. I had Claire Drage on the show like 3 years ago, and she was talking about just the order to get mortgages, right, between credit unions and the big banks. And there's an order that works better in order to be able to get more mortgages. And it's one of those same things that I think with these credit cards, there's probably a right way or a right order to do this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you kind of have to strategize yourself to get to where you want to be. So you kind of have to think about what your next card is going to be and things like that. So for example, if you've got a rental coming up, you better apply for like a 0% card before, right?
or even still, even if you're like yourself, when you want to pay these things off, right? By doing the renovation, you'll earn points. Like most of them are like 1% cash back or 2% cash back, or Aeroplan or Air Miles or Home Depot points or whatever. I don't even think Home Depot has points, but you know what I mean.
But the most lucrative would be the sign-up bonuses, right? So if you have like a $10,000 reno, and let's say those bonus points is issued to you upon spending, let's say $4,000, then you can get 2 credit cards and apply those the renovation costs to those cards and get those those lucrative bonus points.
And if you're planning to do these investments or these things in Canada, the US, even if you're going to do it in Canada, I like to have my renovations on a different credit card than like my groceries and gas and other things. So I like to have like a defined card for the renovations, even if it's in my personal name. I like to have a defined card. I'm gonna say that twice. And then pay for your renos. And then at the end of the year, you'll be like, I don't know, 5 or 10 grand, depending on how much renos you do. I think I got over somewhere between 5 or 10 grand on each of my cards in cash back from renos, right? But I do a lot of renos, so you may not get that many, but it does add up, right?
Even a 2% cash back, on a $10,000 reno, that's $200. Hey.
Yeah, exactly. And then you go, as things slowly open up, we're probably going to travel to the States more and more again. We'll probably get more comfortable with it. And then you'll have some US money, right? right then to go use, right? A little
Yeah.
bit easier. Yeah, it's easier than exchanging anyway.
Yeah.
Don, I think we covered this. Before I go, did I miss anything? I think we got it, but did I miss anything we wanted to talk about?
No, not so much. I mean, the most important thing is, getting the Itin number, right? And I think a lot of people may not know about getting it for free, because a lot of people charge money for this, right? Especially your accountants, they'll charge up to like $250 for this. One of the things I want to share is you can actually apply yourself and just download a W-7 form and follow the instructions and just mail in your certified copy of passport or your own passport.
Yeah, that is actually a really good point. You can get this for free. It is slower, and that's usually what happens is people they get in a rush, and that's why they have to use like a registered agent, which is like a CPA or something. But if you aren't in a rush, yeah, you can do the mail away and get this for free. Yeah, and it saves quite a bit of money.
Yeah, that's right.
It's really smart. The one thing, if you don't have your Itin, and when people get into a rush mode, is you're going to need your Itin to set up your bank account. So if you need this bank account right away, it's one of those things where you end up having to bite the bullet and pay for it.
That's right. Yeah. And a lot of times you can actually set up your US account in Canada first. So for example, I actually am a TD customer in Canada. And then I walk to a Canadian branch, right? And just ask them if I can open a US domiciled bank account. And they just open it based on that. Yeah. And so that would be kind of like your first step of everything, because you need to eventually pay the bills, or American Express bills, in my case, was using that US account, because you cannot pay using a Canadian bank account.
I don't want to go down the corporate structure, but I did find when I went into TD Bank, if you want to set up a corporate bank account, you got to go to the US, but they can do the personal bank accounts at TD.
Yeah, personal.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to go down too much of the corporate part stuff, but that was my the stick. And for anybody who works at TD, I'd really appreciate if you could put a bank in Niagara Falls, New York, Detroit, Michigan, or Buffalo, New York, because it is a pain, because you're so far away. I don't know why they've never put, because they're in New York State. Why not come up to closer to like the Toronto area? I don't get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's my rant. Don, thanks for coming on the show. I do appreciate it. It's a lot of information here.
No, it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thanks.